Captain Fennell, you've testified about the national security community's failure to recognize and combat the CCP threat. How has the U.S. intelligence community fallen prey to influence by the CCP?
Well, Chairman Comer, in my experience in the IC, what we had was this, and I mentioned it before, this threat deflation. That's a creation of my co-author and I, but the message behind it is that we were getting information about China and we were seeing things happen, but because of this kind of overriding engagement policy that we've had as a nation towards China since the opening up of, to China, there was this idea that if we engage with them, that they would change their behavior at some point in time. And because of that mindset that permeated Washington and our institutions, the IC became ensnared with that. And so they were less likely to make the connections to see what was happening. And I have examples. For instance, we saw what happened at 2012 at Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea. We couldn't believe that China was going to take sovereign territory from a treaty ally.
Right.
In 2013 to 2015, they started dredging up sand to build these 7 artificial islands, 3 of which are the size of Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And they did that, but the IC was reluctant to call that out until it was so painfully obvious.
Right.
And we did that over and over and over again, over decades, over various programs, not just in the naval arena, across the board.
Mr. Bethel, you've testified that the CCP has infiltrated top levels of international institutions. Could you explain why China's influence at the World Bank and other international institutions matters to American security?
Well, I addressed some of that earlier in my remarks to the congressman, but consider that U.S. taxpayer money is being funded to an institution that is getting people out of poverty, and at least while I was there, one of the preeminent recipients of money was China. China would then leverage having a developing country status to gain advantage in other multilateral institutions like the World Trade Organization and the Universal Postage Union.
Do you remember roughly how much American tax dollars we're talking about here?
It's a complex question.
Right.
Because we have something. It's a very complex question, which I can take offline with you. But we've effectively backstopped the institution, or at least our share of it, to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars.
Right. Very good. Ms. Cassell, who is the CCP targeting when it engages in elite capture? I know you've mentioned that a little bit. Let's get it into perspective here.
It's a complex answer because they're not targeting a single type or class of individuals. They have a very, very large United Front operation and affiliated organizations who target everything from our political class, state, local, and federal, to our top CEOs, to our chairs of boards of directors, universities, think tanks, business chambers. It's a long list, sir.
So what role does the State Department play in protecting American businesses from CCP influence and becoming so-called corporate hostages? What role does it play, or should it play?
I think the State Department, as I outlined in my written testimony, has a number of tools to inform and educate all of those groups that I just mentioned, sir. And I think also even something like consular affairs, right, where they are issuing travel warnings. I just saw, just to give you an example, the other day, there's a Wall Street research firm, who's, I won't mention, who's advertising for U.S. investors to go with them to China. I believe that's a dangerous thing. And why do we allow it? Well, we can't ban people from going to China, but I think it's incumbent for the safety and security of Americans to inform them of the risks. That's just one small example.
Well, based on your testimony today and the many briefings we've had with federal agencies, it really doesn't seem that there's a cohesive government-wide strategy to combat the CCP influence in American communities. So do you believe we have an effective government-wide strategy in place?
Not yet. But it took us,
So
how many decades did it take us to have an effective strategy against the Soviets? It took us a long time as a democracy. My concern is that we don't have the luxury of time to.
And you agree that we should have a strategy?
We
What would that look like,
well,
in your
we'd
opinion?
have to have another hearing on that, sir.
Well, we probably will, because obviously, we take this very seriously. We understand the threat, and we sincerely want to address this issue. And my time has expired, but I'll say this: I think this has been a very substantive hearing. Obviously, we have very credible witnesses here today, and hopefully, we will continue this issue. This is a priority for the House Oversight Committee for the majority. We want to work with the minority. There are certain members that I think had very substantive questions, and there were some that regurgitate their usual animosity towards the former president. But at the end of the day, I think that we can come together in a bipartisan way to try to address this situation. It begins by making certain that our government agencies know and understand the CCP threat, and I don't believe they do. In 2 hearings, I don't believe we have a single government agency that truly understands the threat and has a plan to alleviate that threat. So hopefully we can continue these hearings and come together as a Congress and make effective change. So in closing, I want to thank our witnesses again for your testimony today. And with that, without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit materials and additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses. If there's no further business, without objection, the committee stands adjourned. Thank you.